All right, welcome back to the Beginner to Master Azul series. Um, Recording this on the same night as episode 7, but we'll be releasing these as separate episodes, so this is technically episode 8. And in the last episode, we got up to 338 ELO, and we will just hop into some games. And okay, game against Jit, who I believe is a watcher of the videos, unless it's a different Jit. Okay, so 2, 4, 6, 7 blacks, and then Jit's 447. So, when we moved to strong, we did open up the rating gap quite a bit, but ultimately nothing we can control. So, okay, so what do we have here? I'll talk about my opponent's play first. In my opinion, these 3 red should have gone on row 5. I like taking the 3 red there, but I think they belong on row 5. There's a lot of black tiles, so you have good opportunity to build row 4 and work on this second column. Red on row 3. There's not a lot of blue. I'm sorry, there's not a lot of yellow. There's a good amount of blue, so you can build this column, but as we've talked about, building on this edge specifically can be very dangerous, and we'll see if it plays out. For my play, I'm just going to take the the first player token, and I'll probably work towards building black, and potentially maybe work towards the middle column. I could still go for column 2, even though there's only 2 reds left. And I do think I like that, actually. The only thing is I will instantly give my opponent 2 blue. So for their row 5, which I think I'm okay with. I'll try to pick up 2 yellow or 2 blue. Played on row 4. Okay, so pivoting the column to row 4. Not bad, not bad. Makes it so that they can complete this row 4. I'm sorry, pivoting to column 4, but now they get to potentially complete row 4. So let's just keep the pressure up with these blacks. And now we're probably free to get row 2 yellow because our opponent no longer needs it. That's not guaranteed, but it's a possibility. Okay, so defends black. So now we kind of have choices between our own column and defending this blue, but actually, blue is part of our column. So basically we'll take the blue and we'll be happy with getting either the white or the red towards the rest of our column. So I think the column pivot from Jut is a decent play. I like it better than building on the edge. The challenge is that he still did build on the edge, and for the sake of upper row adjacency, he might run into some trouble. Okay, so we're probably looking at trying to secure 1 white tile to to prevent our opponent. The blues are going to be hard to defend. We're probably just giving up on that. But then the main thing we're going to try to defend is the red and the yellow. So we will start with this 3 red. It's a pretty easy play for us. And we'll see if we can pick up 2 yellow along the way. One thing, let's see. I don't want to put 2 yellow in because then he can take for row 3 and I'm like pretty much guaranteed to not be able to block him. I could take a yellow now, but let's take the white now. This does, maybe I regret that play a little bit. Like maybe 1 red would have been better, and prevent my opponent from being able to get 2 red. But now we at least get to make this yellow play. So we've prevented row 3 yellow. And we have some interesting options on the board here. We could potentially end up with row 3 blue or row 3 black. So let's see how we want to handle this. If I take 1 black, then my opponent can take row 3 blue and be left with yellow or red. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to give them the opportunity to get row 3 and row 2. So I'm just going to take 1 red and throw it away. And I'm not stressing about this black. There's 10 black left. I effectively only need 3 to, accomplish my goals. So I'm open to just taking row 3 black if it comes to it. One blue would be interesting. Okay, 1 yellow. So giving me some interesting options. And I mean, so basically I'm going to let my opponent have the blue. There's, if I take the blue, they take the yellow. I can take the black and I can fill row 3 and row 4. So is that worth giving up, letting them get row 2? Basically, I can prevent row 2, get my own row 3, or I can get both row 3 and row 4, but take a bunch of additional negatives. Let's prevent the row 2 completion. And part of the logic here is, again, like because they built on this edge, they're working with needing this yellow and this yellow. So as much as I can get them stuck on yellow, especially when I have the first player token, is beneficial for me. And then, like I said, we're happy to play the row 3 black here instead of taking more negatives. knowing that the row 4 black will come, and now we've built some nice additional adjacency for any future white tiles. And I'm going to have to play on the quick side. Let's get these tile counts done. Okay, so we can see the benefit of the defensive play we made. Let's just snatch this one yellow right away. So now our opponent has to choose between row 2 yellow or row 3 yellow. So yeah, so they're going to be stuck without a row 2 again. And I mean, this is pretty great for us, really. We can take this 2 red for row 2. We hopefully will be able to get row 3 white. Our opponent can take some whites, but we should be able to do what we want to do there as well. A play I'm looking at right now is to group these 3 blues together, or rather take this red. So if I take this red, they're forced to play blue on row 1. And it leaves me some flexibility with black and white. Yeah, so this could have worked out better for me, to be honest. I think maybe a bit of a mistake here. I kind of have to take white now. So my opponent doesn't get row 4 white and I get left with nothing. But now they have an interesting decision between which of these rows they want to give me. So I think I probably could have handled this a little bit better. Would be interesting to go back. Okay. I think they probably should have taken the white there. So that white has potential to be worth 6 points in the future. Whereas the black is probably only ever going to be worth 1. The downside of taking the white is that there's 9 of them left. So they do need some other white, but I think the white would have been better for them. And then I also take more negatives from those blacks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Lots of yellow. 4, 3, 7. So tons of white. So we're going to be focused on hopefully trying to get row 2 black in addition to our row 4 black, since there's so much white for the next round. The other thing we're going to look for is row 3 blue. Should be doable, and might actually even just try to pick that up and prevent any ideas of my opponent getting a second column. So let's do that. Okay, so we can take one of these blues, or we can grab a black. Let's grab a blue. Okay. Let's see what we want to do now. This is like a low defense round. I do want to get some. I might want to get reds in the center. Okay, let's just leave it. The trick here is we have to get one of these blacks or whites. But I think our opponent will probably give us that opportunity, because when we take this red, they they most likely have to take, oh, takes 2 white. Okay. So that's interesting. Now we get to group these 4 yellows together. Um, and doesn't matter really what we take here. So they have 2 shots at an additional column. One is the second column and one is the 5th column. Um, but there's 4 blue and there's 4 red left. So, um, they have to get a lot of a one color. Um, and let's make them try for blue if they want to do that. The reason is they still want row 2 blue. Okay, so going for full color yellow, but there's only 2 yellows left. So this will be interesting. They also, there's going to be big opportunities to dump negatives on them with all of these rows open. Oh, they couldn't even go for full color yellow. They were missing the top one. Okay. Well, that makes our job easier. We should just be able to end the game. They will probably get a column, but we're up by 13. And we're going to complete the second row, and they are lacking on the second row. So, as usual, let's keep this simple. Let's make them pay for this extra yellow if they want it. I mean, they don't have to take it now, but just put it in the center, and they do pay extra for it. And then we've got plenty of options for our row 2 white. Let's just secure it now. Okay, so the only way we can score more points is with whites. Might as well go for it. And there's just nothing to worry about here with this lead. So they can do that. We can play all of the remaining tiles, so we won't be taking any big negatives. One thing I was realizing actually is that after these games, we could look at the kind of stats here, just in terms of like points gained with tiles placed and points lost with floor lines. So, in this game, we outscored our opponent by 10 and lost 3 less to the floor. So, but in some games, I wouldn't be surprised if we, maybe we score less but dump more tiles on them. So something to consider looking at. But a good game. We saw that building on the edge, the right edge specifically, really hurt our opponent. I think they probably got a bit unlucky with the way that the yellows came out. But that's kind of a thing with building on the edge, right? Like it makes you more prone to or more heavily impacted by bad luck. When you build in the center, and not necessarily the exact center, but when you build in the center, you're going to have options for your adjacency. You can build in either direction. Whereas if you start on the edge, you can only build in one direction. And when you start on the right edge, you have trouble because you need the same tiles in your column that you do for your adjacency. So the right edge specifically is a spot to avoid. So we saw our opponent take 3 red to row 3 when row 5 probably would have been much better in that opening draw. Okay, so we've got another game. We are the first player this time. And my tile counts must be wrong. Yep, 5 blue. Okay, so very balanced draw. And again, there's the thought of like I could take the 1 blue in row 3, and then, but then if they take 2 blue, I take 2 blue, they could get like 2 blue and 3 red, which is really strong. So I don't really like that. So what do we take here? Could take 2 yellow, but then our opponent is in that same situation. Okay, so let's take 2 blue, and this way, even if our opponent, tries to force us into the other blue, we could have the option instead to like take 2 black. But our opponent chooses white. So let us pivot to, I mean, it's not really pivot because we didn't necessarily build anything, but actually, do I want to do this? Yeah, this is fine. So the problem with this play that I'm about to make is that if my opponent takes blue, I'm kind of forced to take blue because I don't want to leave my row 3 empty or incomplete since it's not aligned with my column. If I were building the center column, I'm fine leaving it incomplete because it's all aligned. But with me needing to get whites, I'd prefer for it not to be. That being said, I have options for completing it. So I still have 2 blue options, so I can work on my row 4 and row 5 in the meantime. Tricky spot for my opponent. Potentially would just take 2 blue here. Yep, looks good. So the downside for me is I can't really take 1 blue, at least not for my row 3, because if I take 1 blue, I'm only going to have 1 play left. So you always got to be aware of how many rows you have left and how many plays you have left. If I take 1 blue, my opponent goes, I go, my opponent goes, end of round, since there's only 3 colors left. So I can't take it. Or if I do take it, I have to take it on row 1, not on row 3. So instead, I can take 2 yellow, and unfortunately, despite saying I really wanted to complete this, most likely it's not going to happen. Okay, it is going to happen. And my opponent actually just kind of broke the rule I was just saying. So they only have 1 play left. So they're going to have to only get row 1 or row 2. Okay, so we're in a very good situation heading into round 2. Now, we have a bit of luck. We also have a bit of bad luck, so only 2 black, going to be hard to finish that. But we do get these 3 white, which are great. And there's enough reds that hopefully we can make some damage on our row 5. So one thing to look out for, I guess, is we do want row 2 blue, and I'm going to try to induce it by taking one black here. And if my opponent takes the other black, I would get the 2 blue, and if they don't, I get my 4 black. I'll be able to play row 2 red in the event that I don't get blue. And I've talked about, one of the benefits of building the second column being that your opponent has to defend red, and we can see my opponent making this somewhat awkward play to defend red. So now I'm going to try to stick them with a ton of yellows. So I'm going to take this red for my row 1, and maybe I'm not. Let me calculate briefly. So that was going to stick me with a bunch of yellows. What I want is 4 colors in the middle. So I have to do it this way. Nope, not this way. I have to take a different color. And maybe it's going to be blue. So this is a tad risky, because there was a chance that I ended up with no column 2. I think it was unlikely. And now we will secure our column 2, and we will stick our opponent with -8 in negatives. So you can see, like, in that situation, I was very cognizant of the negatives more than anything else. I didn't want to get all those yellows dumped on me. And prioritized that above some other priorities, because if you look at where we're at now, I'm up by 6, which isn't a huge lead, but that's almost a column. Like, that's almost a column's lead. So, okay, so this round, what are we looking at? Reds, of course. We want this 2 blue, but we don't need to rush for it because our opponent doesn't have anywhere to play blue, really. We do want 1 red for our top row, so we might end up sacrificing the bottom row red, but I don't think that's necessary. I think we can just take this and we'll maybe end up playing a black or a white on row 1. So we'll lose some adjacency points for the sake of getting our row 5 finished. And oh, this is kind of nice, I think. I think we can take red. And this kind of forces our opponent to take this red, which they don't. Okay, so it forced one of 2 things. Either they don't get red, or we would get that yellow. So they chose the yellow over the red, which is fine. But we're in a great situation because we can get either of these row 2s. So we're just going to prevent our opponent, and we'll eat some negatives on this blue, but we should score pretty well here. Okay, so our 6-point lead is now up to a 10-point lead. That was a lot of black. Okay. So there's 5 white and only 3 black, so I'd like to get the black row 2, because white will be easier to get next round. And my opponent needs additional blacks. So they want row 2 black and they want this last black. So I should be able to take black here. I'm going to take the one that doesn't put a red in the middle since my opponent wants two reds. Okay, takes the black. And now we get the nice situation of this white play. So we're threatening 6 points next round. There's 5 whites, so we can support all of this. And in addition to threatening the 6 points next round, by defending this, we get the 3 yellow. So saw that ahead of time as well. And for these blues, the biggest threat to us would be yellows. So if I play the blues, I'll give myself the opportunity to take a bunch of negative yellows. So given our point lead, I'm just going to dump those blues. And basically I'm saying, hey, you know, I'm willing to take a -4 here to prevent myself from potentially accidentally taking, you know, -11 or -14 in the next round. So hopefully we've got some flexibility this round. A couple things to watch out for. My opponent going for a second column is one. So we want to be mindful of that. But we can end the game. My opponent should take these 2 white, I think, for their row 1 to prevent me from playing on row 1 or... Okay, so I don't understand the row 3 red play. That's going to be worth 3 points to them. It doesn't, you know, versus these whites are worth 9 points to me. So not sure what the red was about. Okay. And now we can do something kind of interesting, which is to give them one of the yellow or the blue, but not both. So I'm not playing those black to score with them. I will take whichever of the yellow or the blue my opponent doesn't take. And they take the black, surprisingly. So this yellow is worth 2 points for us, or 1, 2, 3, 4 points for our opponent. The blue is worth 0 points for us, 1, 2, 3, 4, but gives them additional points on this white. Yeah, I mean, don't actually need to do the math here. So again, up by 10, scoring roughly equal to our opponent in this round. So comfortable just leaving the specific math and doing the rough estimates, and we win by 20. So we could see the challenges that my opponent ran into defending red. They ended up playing this row 4 red and kind of slowed them down in certain areas. Let's get one more game in. Okay, we have the... Oh, they left. Okay, I was going to say we had the same opponent. So we are getting into, um, more challenging situations than in the first couple of episodes. Um, and I think the main thing that's changing is tile management. Um, so one of the edges we've had over our opponents is making sure that we don't end up with big negatives at the end of a round, um, or that if we do, it is offset by their negatives, or offset by the amount of points we're scoring. So, and our opponents are still, making some round one mistakes with mismatched rows 4 and 5. I don't know. I don't know that that's happened in this episode yet. I don't think it has, but did happen in the last episode. But generally, I think we're seeing some stronger play, and we're having to make a little bit some trickier plays. And some of that maybe also we've been getting a little bit less lucky with tiles. The draws haven't been as straightforward for us. So in that last game, I think, spent a long time to complete our row 4 black, maybe. Just the way the tiles came out. So no luck getting a strong player yet. We'll give it another few minutes. Maybe I can open it up to good players as well. Okay, great. Got a strong player. And they left. And they're back. Okay. Nice draw here for our favorite column. I think instead of starting with reds, I would maybe advocate for starting with whites here, just because red isn't super desirable for our opponent necessarily, and we know we'll be able to get at least 2 of them, so we can be happy with that. Okay, so our opponent building on the left edge, so we'll get to see how this plays out. Not going to defend these reds, just want to secure the first player token. And again, not going to take these reds and give my opponent a free row 3. One consideration here, though, is to take the 2 yellow, which blocks their row 5 instead of the 2 blue. And one reason to do this is there was an opportunity to potentially pivot columns. If they let us get those blues, we could have actually just pivoted to the 4th column and gone for like 3 or 4 blues here and then the 2 white and been in okay shape. As it stands, we'll just grab the reds. And let's see what we can do about preventing them from getting their row 2. So the way to do this is basically to take one of the black or the white from the center. And then when they group the other one, we'll just take, so like we take the black, so their only opportunity for row 2 is to group these whites. And if they group those whites, then we will just take them. And it's better, both black and blue are better on row 2 or on row 1 for us than white is. So we're going to throw them away, and then we'll play whichever we get left with. So if you're new to the series, maybe skipped ahead to some of the higher ELO gameplay thus far, at least, you'll notice that we did not really stress the location of our top row tiles. The bigger incentive is working on, I mean, we didn't really get very far on rows 4 and 5, but it's okay to not have like a straight line or a zigzag or whatever else you may have seen suggested. Okay, so in this round, I mean, this first play is quite straightforward for us. Those 4 black are very strong. It doesn't give our opponent the opportunity to take the first player token. So now what do we want to do? We're not really sure where our opponent's headed. Most likely they're still going to try for this column because of the row 4 red, but they could, kind of be headed in any direction. One thing I'm looking at is the potential to get row 3 blue, just based on my opponent's usage of blue. So let's grab a red in the first player tile. We might end up going for row 2 red. Our opponent, kind of defends red in a way. But okay, let's play for either row either row 3 blue or yellow. So we've been focused so much on adjacencies so far, but I'm going to actually take these 2 white, and basically what I'm looking for is to create opportunities to get my row 3, where if I played row, okay, so my opponent takes 2 blue to row 4. Now let's defend this and create a situation where, so we'll defend with the blue, we create some miniature adjacency. Yeah, and now we get to leave our opponent with a bunch of open rows. So they kind of have to take the red here. Whether or not they trash it, I'm not sure. Yeah. And then let's take this blue for future investment and to block our opponent's row 4. Okay, so we took tons of negatives this round. We might be behind in points, but our opponent's board is all over the place. So their future column prospects are looking pretty bleak right now. And basically, they were in this situation with these reds where they either had to take them or take additional negatives. Wow, only 1 red. Okay. So quite an interesting round. Somewhat unfortunate for us, to be honest. Our opponent can use these yellows we aren't going to be able to finish red. We have nowhere to play these 4 blacks really. We can play yellows on row 4, but it's not great for us. And blue is highly contested. So let's assume we're going to get a row 2 black. And let's fight for, yeah, we're gonna have to give him a yellow. That's fine. Let's fight for the blues. So we'll close out this this row 3 blue, and what's gonna happen, yeah, is all these whites are gonna go in the middle, which is strong for us actually because we have row 4 white open. So that's going to be a nice 5 or 6 point play for us. And we don't have to worry about taking it right now because what's our opponent going to do? Put him on row 1 and block us. So what I'm going to do is secure this row 2 black before they get bunched together. So this game is a great example of when to forego adjacency. We did it in the last round to try to get more tiles on the board, and we're doing it in this round just based on the tile draw. So let's take a red for row 1, and we'll actually have the choice here of this white is going to be a 6 point play. We'll go -2, so it's going to be a 4 point play. And my opponent will go -4, so it's an 8 point swing for us. We could take the yellow and make them go -8, but we don't really want the yellow over here. So let's take the white and keep our board intact. There's, some potential for future adjacency points with this white tile. 2, 4, 6. Okay. So what are we looking at? Obviously, it'd be great to get reds. The other thing to be aware of is we want 2 blue this round because there's only 2 left and we need it for our column. So we definitely want that. Another thing to look out for is like when your opponent has incomplete rows, often there are free tiles for you. So what do I mean by that? Our opponent can't play any yellow tiles, but there are 4 yellows out. So like my row 3 yellow is basically guaranteed, or row 4 yellow if it should turn out that way. So I don't need to stress about yellows. I'm happy to get them in the center. And in this case, I'm going to take the first player token for the last round and get this red on the board. Now, if my opponent takes 1 red, I think it's quite likely that I'll just take the blue. There's 5 red left, and I would need 3 of them. Given that my opponent did not take the red, let's see what I want to do. I think I still like taking the blue, because if I take the red, my opponent can group those blue in the center. And in doing this, I group some blacks in the center, so I make it, I'm not forcing my opponent to take 1 black, but, it's much harder for them to ignore it. So, again, when you find free tiles for yourself, like these yellows, it also means those could be potential negatives for your opponent. So when there's 5 colors remaining, if you can get them all in the center, then your opponent will go last. So I'll take this red, and actually I don't want to do that. That leaves me with just the 2 white as my first row option. So let's instead of dumping the yellows on our opponent, let's use the fact that we can play them and we don't need to be scared of them to our advantage. I should have screenshotted that situation, but basically I wanted to secure the white for row 1, and I chose to do it in a way that didn't group the reds. So now we take 1 white. Our opponent should take 3 blue. And we want to play the yellow on row 3. So we will take -2, but we score 3 points instead of 1 point. So that's a net 0. So we would have scored 1. Instead, we scored 3 -2. That's still 1. But now when we play row 2 red, we'll get extra adjacency. And maybe we'll even play row 3 red, given this draw. So what do we want to do first? We do want this 1 yellow, but I'm not too worried about my opponent taking it. It's an awkward tile for them to take. And if I have to take 3 yellow, then so be it. Whoops, misclick. So now I'll grab this yellow. And okay, so our opponent concedes. Cool. So we are up to 403 ELO. Now that we hit the strong range and have been playing some players well above our range, we're climbing quite rapidly. So hopefully we're getting into the range that folks are finding more interesting. And in this game, again, we kind of put our opponent in a situation of trying to defend red, where they ended up putting 2 on their row 5, and it completely, busted up their board. They weren't in any position to build a column. We got some nice tile luck too. I think we got the 4 black on round 2, so that was nice for us. Yeah, another episode in the books. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.